All right, I'm gonna go ahead and I've got this recorded, and I'll respect everyone's time and get started. Hope everyone is having a great week, and we're kind of into our second week of the book club. We won't have any meeting next week. I'll be actually in DC for Advocacy Week next week. So it'll be a good week to kind of catch up if you're a little bit behind, or do a lot of brainstorming because we're kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of the book now, which I'm excited about. Lots of good stuff or good takeaways for me personally this past week. And again, I'm reminded I do business planning every year. I'm a big proponent of the four disciplines of execution. E-Myth revisited a lot of goal setting, business oriented type business planning books or sort of genre of podcasting and anything business related. But it's always great when you do this kind of thing or a book club because it sort of regrounds you to some of the basic principles or the fundamentals about goal setting. And I think this past week was good for me. I got the Audible version of it too, so I could, one of my typical New Year's resolutions was to get to the gym a little bit more. So I've been listening to it on the treadmill, and lots of good takeaways for me this week. So hopefully you guys found that we're getting into, like I said, some of the meat and potatoes of it a little bit more. I'm going to screen share, and you guys can see my notes. And again, just like last week, I'll share the recording for this and some collateral as well. Try and keep my eye on the room if anyone is joining as well. Let's see here. Oops, I'm going to have to pop back and forth. But for session 2, it started off, we talked a little bit about the science of goal setting. And we've already talked about chapter 1, science of goal setting. Chapter 2, grit and goals. We talked about and foreshadowed a little bit how important grit and intestinal fortitude would be. That's part of this bridge method that we're going to get into. Choosing the right goals, and I think sort of took a deeper dive on the difference between maybe what some ambiguous SMART goal setting would be and really getting into some detailed learning goals and differences between learning goals and performance goals, and the role of positive relationships, which is interesting as well. And I think that feeds into, no pun intended, the feedback loop. What I would have been calling prior to this sort of that cadence of accountability, but getting that positive feedback and having the right people around you, very important. So jumping into it, anybody have any particular takeaways before I get into what my thoughts were for this past week? Anything jump out at you or anything kind of click a light bulb? Make sure I'm screen sharing still too. Really liked, they talked a little bit about the ikigai, the Japanese concept that refers to a sense of purpose, joy in life, combination of the Japanese words iki, live, and gai, reason. You see that terminology pop up in a lot of different cultures, a lot of different contexts. A reason to live, a reason for being, the happiness of being busy, the art of doing something with joy and focus. They talked about people that lived in blue areas that had a preponderance of this sort of sense of ikigai or reason for being. You would hear that maybe some in Western cultures as purpose or reason for being. There's a French version of that. It slips my mind right now off the top of my head, but other goal setting sort of practices, you'll hear it referred to as what's your big why is a big thing, in Keller Williams paradigm. And Gary Keller talks a lot about what your big why is, or focusing in on your North Star. So lots of, I think that's always important. I've talked about the importance of mindset, skill set, and tool set in doing and accomplishing anything that you want. You have to have the right mindset, refresh that motivation and mindset on a regular basis. But you also have to build out your skill sets and your purview. what your bandwidth is for any particular subject matter. Always learning. You got, you've heard the sayings, learn to grow, learn to earn. But building out those particular skill sets around whatever you're focused on or your goal setting is around. And of course, we have to have and utilize quite often tools, and we have to have the right tools and be able to be um, able to engage with and utilize those tools at a high level. So, mindset, skill set, tool set, and what lives above that mindset is again this concept of ikigai or big why, what your North Star is. So, figure out, why do you get out of bed in the morning? What motivates you? What are we doing this for? Anyone that has a particular career, it's often easier to find happiness in what you do if it is in alignment with what your purpose is. I think you find that, they talk about that in certain churches and business settings, but I think it goes across the board, right? We have to understand why we do what we do. So you want to have like super clarity on that, be crystal clear about why it is that you're in. If everyone on this call is in real estate, then we have to figure out, why real estate? We're independent contractors. Why do we have this business that we have? What's the purpose of it? What are we using it to drive? Is it simply to pay the bills so that your family can fund its way of life? Do you have other alternative goals, whether it's to take care of an aging adult, special needs child, put kids through college? Maybe you enjoy traveling and that's part of your personal development and growth, and this is the avenue for which you fund that. So, again, what is the ikigai around what your purpose is and why we do what we do? So it makes sense. Hopefully, that concept makes sense to everyone, because that's sort of everything pings off of that. Any challenges around that, or any questions around getting clarity around what that means or looks like? So the next thing is we go into what the purpose is, what your ikigai, your big why, your North Star, and what is the dream? What is your dream? What is your vision? And again, that's something that if you don't have clarity around it, you may want to take some time to figure out what it is that you're looking to do with your life. What's the dream? What's the vision? And we're going to talk a little bit about a little bit later, and what the chapter goes into, which I think is super important. That's living a life of purpose as opposed to living a reactive life, and finding happiness in that. And I think it's easy to see or determine why it would be you would get greater happiness out of living a life of purpose than just being reactive, right? When you're living a life of purpose, you're able to view obstacles a little bit differently. If you're living a sort of a reactive life, those obstacles come across as almost like the universe is working against me. Why me? A lot of negative mindset, thought processes drift in. Whereas opposed to if you're living sort of this proactive, purpose-driven life, knowing what your, again, ikigai is, then you can see those obstacles as opportunities sometimes, and an opportunity for growth, certainly, and an opportunity to sort of expand your bandwidth. And with greater when you avail yourself to those opportunities, then things start to open up. So thought that was pretty cool, being able to start there. Again, it mimics a lot of some of the other goal planning type books, models that are out there. I might have talked about this in week 1, but I really love when you go from purpose to what is the dream, what is your vision. Do a little exercise called, future self, best possible future self. And when I was in Maryland Leadership Academy, we had this older gentleman. He's still going pretty strong, but he was from Sweden. His name was Jan Hobolt. He does a lot of work in the correctional facilities in the Baltimore correctional facilities, and works with inmates and felons. He had us do an exercise where we sort of got grounded. We closed our eyes. It was one of those things where you turn all the lights off, and you had to do this visualization exercise where you visualize someone interviewing you 5 years from now, after you've obtained everything that you wanted to in your dream or your vision, what your outlook look like, having obtained the goals that you set for yourself. And the interviewer basically asked, how did you overcome those obstacles to get where you're at? And it basically sort of reverse engineered that process, where it made you consciously think about what were some of those things that might pop up that could have gotten in your way. How did you overcome them? Really being able to look at the roadmap, the journey, and everything that you were able to do to overcome anything that got in your way to obtain your goals. And it's great. In Stoicism, there's this concept of premeditatio malorum. It's thinking about sort of all of the bad things that can happen. I think Caroline Miller talks a little bit, as she coined her own phrase in there, of premeditatio bonum too, but thinking of all the good things that can happen. But in that Stoic principle, it's not necessarily about being negative about all the bad things that can happen. It's really just, again, being mindful of any of the obstacles that may get in your way, or anything that may hinder you from achieving what your goals are. So it's great to do that. It's a great exercise if you're going to do this. Again, we have a whole week off next week, so we want to talk about starting to line up what those learning goals are, what those performance goals are, what the metrics might look like for some of those performance goals. And we can do some of these visualization exercises about, all right, this is what my future self looks like. This is how I've overcome some of these obstacles that were in my way. So any thoughts around some of those concepts? Has anybody ever done that before, done an exercise like that before, been in any kind of leadership? Jeannie, you're quiet this week. Makes me nervous.
Sorry. The Servpro mediator.
Oh yeah, no worries.
My house. And my screen is very strange. I don't know what everybody else seeing that too. It's like,
Yeah, looks good.
yes, I have done goals like this many times, in fact, to nauseam, which is why this theory intrigued me, to see what fresh approach I may receive to help me in a time where I could be relaxing a little bit more and not having anyone give any pressure to me other than myself, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like Greg, when I walk in the door, I want you to be proud that I am one of your agents, not just because I've got a great personality.
No, always, for sure.
So,
But yeah, I get it. And the thing that I'm most excited that has been different for me when we start getting into some of that feedback loop, and also so the importance of surrounding yourself with people that really have your back. I think I'm going to pull it up, which she had a little exercise in there. Let me see if I wrote it down. I may not have written it down, but relationships. But she talked a little bit about, I forget the example that she used offhand, but people that really, obviously, people around you, if they hear good news about you, they're excited for you, they promote it, they advocate for you or share things for you. But having that kind of support system within whatever your goals are is phenomenal. And certainly not anyone who's going to belittle what your goals are. I remember years ago, probably about 15, 20 years ago, when I started this foundation for the Chesapeake Bay, I had an office manager sort of mock me and what I was doing around it. And it was very telling and enlightening, because I realized, all right, this person doesn't really truly have my best interest at heart, or isn't part of my support network, which I thought that they were. We used to go out and have a bottle of wine and have dinner with him and his wife. And but it was interesting when there were telltale signs of the different things outside of my comfort zone when I started doing them, there was more, some almost like a kind of mocking it as opposed to supporting it. And I was like, okay, I see some true colors in that. And then, no judgment, no expectations for people. I just realized that that person probably might not be a good fit for my inner circle, so to speak. So it's important to have those people around you.
That was interesting. I do agree, Ray. I learned early on, she kind of went through other gender specific things again in
Yeah.
her writing. And one area that I kind of questioned or did ponder was when she said that women don't get the same benefits as men do when they're givers. Being in a networking group that it's all about, it's the mantra is givers gain.
Hmm.
At this point, with the nature of our industry, I have not seen the giving coming back to me, but I have been giving the nature of our business. I don't want to say that that's the excuse, but I have given it that kind of grace. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't sense sometimes quite the gender inequality, especially in our industry, because
Yeah.
it's been so, naturally male and female for so many years. And I
Right.
also think the military too, like that we're in an area that, well, that may happen in some places. I don't see it in my world that extends beyond my real estate office.
Yeah, it's interesting that you pull that out. Obviously, as I'm reading it as sort of this, white bearded man. I think she even referred it to older white bearded men in it at one point in time. But and she certainly alludes to some of those gender differences, and it's hard for me to say one way or the other. I can't, because obviously I don't experience life the same way that you do, or women do, or people of color do. So it is interesting to pick up on that. And I think, in our industry, it is certainly a diversified industry from leadership. There's certainly more women than men in my circle. Overall, I would say probably within my agent friend circle, but it is interesting to see that. And maybe it does happen, and maybe it's different in different industries. I mean, she's teaching this book from a broad industry perspective, and I can certainly see how that could happen.
Yeah, I certainly don't see that in the government. In fact, I think it's a little bit more opposite, which is so why sometimes I'm taking what I'm reading with a grain of salt as far as, okay, just get
Yeah,
through this to
yeah,
the next thing of value or the next gem that I can pull. Were you referring to that character strength survey that she referred to?
yeah. I haven't done it yet, but it's I want to share my screen. It's the VIA character strength thing. I've got a link in it. I'm going to send that link out with my follow up, and it is the VIA character test, the science based VIA character strengths and values test. I think is what you're referring to.
Yeah,
I haven't
I
done it
did
yet.
it. I liked it.
Oh yeah, good, good. I was
Hmm.
wondering if anyone did it, so that's great. I'm going to do it sometime today. I just hadn't had a chance to get to it yet. Obviously, I've done a lot of personality profile things, disc training, Myers Briggs, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely interesting uh, about that.
So I'm if I can, like I was able to uh once you take the test, you can download your results. Um and if I can share my screen, I'm happy to show
Yeah,
what it looks like.
yeah. I'll stop sharing mine so you can share yours.
All right, so let's
And while you're
see.
pulling that up, I'll just Shadra had put something in the chat, speaking to that as well, so you guys can check it out in the chat.
So can you see it? My first and foremost is honesty,
Okay.
which works very well for what we do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So these are my top five. And what she was saying is like if you focus your goals on the things that are natural to you know what I mean? Uh, that you should be able to accomplish them with more joy or more uh, comfort. I don't know, more successful um,
Yeah.
feelings, I guess. But it
Sure.
goes all the way down. Like there's a lot of them.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this
I
was
can't.
fun.
I can't wait to do that. I love those kind of things, and I think anytime you're able to be self-introspective and focus a little bit on some of the emotional intelligence or EQ aspects of how you communicate, how you receive other people, and how people receive you, I think is always a good idea, and it's good. It's
Okay,
definitely been
I'll
shown
give
that
this back to you. There you go.
yeah, people with higher EQ are able to work or collaborate better in groups. So not necessarily, you don't always need that necessarily in the real estate world. Some independent contractors, and you can fly solo dolo out there and do your own thing. But if you're going to build a team, or if you're going to collaborate at any level with people, that certainly is going to help. And Jadra, I agree with you on certainly. I think it depends on the industry and the different paradigm in which or around where you work, where some of those differences may pop up. The good thing I think about, what I think about when you're reading that part of her messaging is just at least being aware of maybe there is some bias sometimes when someone's telling you how to motivate yourself. And I think maybe even more so necessarily than a different across different gender differences or racial differences, it's personality differences, right? Because I I can be motivated much differently than somebody else can, because people, first off, you can't motivate anybody. You can inspire people, but motivation comes from within. Um, so you can give people the tools and resources to buy into whatever their own motivation is, but you've got to be self motivated to do whatever you want to do. That's why I can tell you 2 decades of being in real estate, 15 about 11 years now of being a high level leadership within the real estate industry. I've seen people that on paper look like they're going to be amazing rock stars. They say all the right things, read all the right books, and then wash out of real estate in 4 to 5 months. And other people, you're like, man, this person couldn't find their way out of a paper bag, and they end up making it because of grit, tenacity, fortitude. They just fail through some things and keep going, right? That whole, what's that thing in Finding Nemo? Just keep swimming. The people that just keep swimming are the ones who end up getting there, right? Certainly, if you have talent, it helps. If you work hard, it helps. But you have to have that intestinal fortitude and that grit to overcome some of those things. So, yeah, good observations there for sure. And like I said, I'm excited to take that. And for anybody that hasn't, I'll make sure I send that link out on the follow up as well. All right, let me get back to some of my notes here. Yeah, so I love that future self exercise. And then we start talking about, we go from purpose, what's the dream, the vision, what's my future self look like? Now we want to focus in and drill down specifics on those goals, what the learning goals are, what the performance goals are, what some of the metrics around those performance goals are. And then we get into um, the bridge methodology, which is, again, where the rubber meets the road. I think with this whole book, it's about brainstorming, relationships, investments, decision making, good grit, and excellence. So I do have, another uh, little document I'll send out on breaking down that bridge methodology there, and the sort of the bullet points of all of those. Brainstorming representing the initial stage and idea generation, relationships focusing on building strong, trust based connections with stakeholders. I just, something popped into my head real quick. I read this article one time or study about predictive success and analytics within colleges or college students' experiences. And it had very little to do with the degrees or type of less to do with the degrees or type of higher education that they got, as opposed to the networks that they formed within their college experience. And the networks and the people and the relationships that they built around their college experience was a greater determining factor than anything else, grades, anything else. So, yeah, Shadra, I see you have your hand up. Sorry.
No problem. So I guess one of the questions that you asked earlier, basically just what we got out of it, and then I feel like y'all have kind of talked about a few of them too. But I'm also listening to the Audible, so if I'm going too far ahead, y'all please stop me in my tracks.
Right. Yeah, you're good.
But what I really love about this book, like, I mean, obviously, I'm taking all of her personal experiences with a grain of salt because, maybe I have, maybe I haven't dealt with the same thing she's dealt with. But what I love about it is how she gives like the examples of big goals where people had the big goals and they failed, and then they had the big goals and they succeeded. And so, Greg, you just talked about the one with the lady that, she had people in her corner that were telling her, you can't do this. And she pretty much had to kind of, avoid her dad for a while because she
Yeah.
couldn't be around him while she was going after that goal because he was not going to give her what she needed um,
Right.
to help her mentally reach that goal. And so that was one where I'm like, okay, she succeeded because of that. And then they said another one, I think you kind of just touched on it, or maybe I just saw it on the paper, um, about like getting a mentor. They had the lady that she was very successful in something and she was used to like going after these performance goals. And I guess when she was consulting with, I'm assuming the author of this book, she was consulting with somebody and they realized, okay, this is not a performance goal, this is a learning goal. So you need to kind of go back to the basics to get after this goal. And that's when she ended up getting the mentor from the Small Business Administration and kind of
Yeah.
like she had to change her group that she was around to help her reach whatever that particular goal was. So those were the two where I was like, okay, this is somebody reaching the big goals because they realize like they reached the big goals, I guess, in a good way. But then she also before that gave the examples of the Titanic, the guy that kind of was made the submarine to go down to the Titanic, and then it I think the word is imploded, basically went inside, I don't know. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other one she gave was the Ford Pinto and how that was a disaster. And I've
Yeah.
even seen it in the airline industry with Boeing. And I don't know if this was this book or another book that I've read in the past, but first of all, I'm a flight attendant, so I'm all into the airline stuff. I research that stuff. But with the Boeing planes, the Max 737 and 800, the ones that went down, like normally it takes Boeing like 10 years to approve a new plan. That one, there was a rush on the planes. And I can't remember what, there was a regulation that I think initiated that. But anyways, American Airlines was typically the first airline um, to start all the new planes for Boeing. And then for some reason, I can't remember, something fell through with the contract. And so, anyways, instead of taking 10 years, they took 6 years to get it done. So they had this big goal and they just went really quickly with it. And we all saw how that impacted people. A lot of people lost their lives, like 2 crashes within the first year or something like that, they said. Again, like I said, I might be skipping over books because
No,
I.
no. Yeah. No, everything that you just said sort of resonated with me, and I had forgotten until you brought it back up. That swimming example, you're right. Like she had to, she was older, and paraphrasing, but her dad basically said, you're crazy, you can't do this kind of thing. So
Mhm.
she had to eliminate that negative sort of mindset or self talk from her world until she did indeed
Yeah.
accomplish her dream. She probably wouldn't have been able to do it if that was the messaging that she would have received every day. And yeah, the whole Leah Iacocca example there with Chrysler, with the Chrysler and the fiasco that was the Pinto car. Yeah, but and it's interesting.
Also the Ford Maverick. They were both of them. I lived in that era. My mother had a Maverick, and we got in a car accident. Actually, a tractor trailer hit the back of us, and it was right around when all the goodness. If some of you are as old as I think Greg and I are, you like the 3 channels that we had back then.
Right.
All
Yeah.
news. And
What kind of-
another thing that I like, that Shadra, is that how you say it? Shadira, had brought up is I like the examples. They're so current. Like this, you can tell this book is very recently written in some aspects that it's like, oh my gosh, this woman took that Titanic designer. I mean, of that submersible, with the gaming console. We just saw that on the news. It seems like 6 months ago, and she
Yeah.
went to print and has a book out. And so I felt that really helped me stay engaged in this as she's building out her theory and her program.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and talking about that, like you don't want to compromise your integrity when you're doing these goal settings. There's a process that you want to follow, and I think that's what she's trying to get across here is sort of that the science behind the goal setting theory. For me, in talking to agents, there's a point of demarcation too, though, where you don't want to you don't want to overanalyze it to the point where you're afraid to engage, right? Perfection is the enemy of good. Analysis by paralysis kind of thing keeps a lot of agents from really doing things. But to the same thing, you don't want to do things in a haphazard sort of half-ass way. Obviously, she cited a bunch of examples on that. And to your point, Jeannie, yeah, I love that she's talking about AI and the impact that it's having. One of my learning-based goals that I'll talk about probably the next time we meet is revolved around AI. And I started my first class the night before last for this new AI course that I'm taking. And so that is tying into one of my learning-based goals. But yeah, I love the fact that there's a lot of contemporary information here as well. Go back in here, some of my notes. So yeah, we're going to take a deep dive on, again, that bridge method. We talked about the relationships, focusing on building strong, trusted-based connections. That's how we started that tangent of conversations. Investments refers to allocating resources, time, energy, money, and effort. Again, that's a big one for me. If you're going to do this, you got to make sure that time is our most precious resource. So you're allocating the proper amount of time, and you're being purposeful with the amount of time you're putting towards something. Decision making, and I think that talks into some of these ill-informed decisions that were cited in here, but centers around making informed, thoughtful decisions that align with the goals and values, as opposed to forcing something that may not be in alignment with what your overall core value is. And then, of course, good grit. We've talked about that. We'll continue to talk about that. And then excellence, the last part of the bridge method, representing the pursuit of high quality outcomes and continuous improvement. Again, kind of talking a little bit about some of the things that we just did talk about. But yeah, so we covered a lot of those things that we just talked about. Love it. Sounds like you guys are getting some good stuff out of it. Yeah, execute.
I'm sorry. There's a paragraph about psychological safety. And I had to giggle because it made me a little bit more sensitive to interrupt eye rolling or lip curling on the Zoom call, that maybe I will not allow my emotions to show on my face if somebody may be annoying me.
Yeah. It's something I've been trying to practice for a long time now. Some of those EQ things and stoicism. I went through a long time where I was really took a deep dive in stoicism, and two of the things that I got out of that was, and I know to some people it sounds just super counterintuitive, but no judgment and no expectations, because it's really hard. Took a course based around this book called Fierce Conversations, and a lot of that was not filling the script in for someone. So even when someone does something that may look completely crazy to me, asinine, or just sort of off the wall, I have to remind myself, I don't know what they're going through. I don't know, maybe I'm taking it out of context. And quite often I've realized that, the expectation I had might not be in alignment with what their expectation was or the reality of the situation. So not really having a judgment of when I'm seeing or hearing things, and no expectations for people, has helped me a lot of times avoid not being as angry around situations or reactive. So it seems counterintuitive, but it's helped me out quite a bit. Yeah, and then we talked about the last thing, and she talks a little bit about it. I mean, she might not have used the word mentor, but definitely finding examples. And that's something I have I'm going to put into my, because of this book and because it reminded me, there's some objectives that I have, some performance objectives that I have coming up around advocacy and leadership. And I'm going to reach out to someone that I just found out, someone in a very high level leadership position that's been doing it for 25 years. I'm just going to reach out and schedule a lunch with them and just be like, I'd love to go to lunch and, tell me what your experience has been. And maybe if there's anything that you could share with me. So I think that might
industry, Brad?
Say again?
Are they in the same industry?
They are.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, they're an icon within the industry. But but I just realized they're in a position that I'm tracking towards or I want to be. So why not just go meet them and have a conversation? So we'll see. All I can do is say no. Again, what do you wake up for? Why do we exist? I might be, Shadra, going a little ahead, but I love, she talks about, and I don't know exactly what part of the book this is in, but I made a note of it anyway, checklist manifesto. I'm a big checklist person and I love it. She had mentioned in there, checklist should not be more than 5 to 7 items. I definitely violate that rule sometimes. However, I think it's a great way for me to do sort of a mind dump, put things on paper or virtual paper, and be able to um, systematize or make my life a little bit more systemic in nature so that it's replicable and I'm able to repeat those activities. And that's, she talks about that in the performance goals.
5 to 7 number was interesting as well, because I historically, for working with buyers, have always had that kind of a number as a daily max, as far as like, you know, yes, how many can we fit, but how many can you actually remember, absorb, and, you know, keep separate to really truly be able to pick the largest one if you fire hose yourself compared to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I found that a confirmation, you know, from someone who's a little bit more intelligent in that, like, to do a data.
Yeah, someone has put some thought into it for sure. Yeah, so I'm going to be mindful of that kind of moving forward with my checklists. But cool. So we're at about 40 minutes in now. I will give you guys back a few minutes on this. Let me take a look at what we have on tap for next week. So we don't have anything next week. So in 2 weeks we'll meet and we'll be talking about week 3, putting it all together. We should be through chapters 5 and 6 by then, courage, grit, and setbacks. But the big thing is over the next 2 weeks, start thinking about what your learning goals are and your performance goals are, and start thinking about those pieces within the bridge methodology, who those people you're going to surround yourself with and maybe incorporate into your feedback loop will be. So anybody have anything else before we close out for the day?
Hey, Greg. It's Christian.
Hey, Christian. How are you, buddy?
Oh, there. Yeah, screen's being a little slow as well. Hi.
Hi.
So, yeah, so one thing that kind of going back to one of the earlier chapters, I think it was, at least for me, that, you know, that I found useful for me was I have the goals set up, but I was, you know, I have the big goal, right? But I wasn't going back and going through the smaller steps, you know, achieving those smaller goals that are going to help me get to the next step, and then reach that final goal that, you know, that I set for myself.
Yeah.
And the finding the mentor piece, that one was, I'm working on that as well. So I've been reaching out to different people in the field, kind of similar, just picking their brains out.
Yeah.
And disassociating with people that are not in that same support, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's a few of the things that I've taken from the book.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. You know, it's cliche and I'll sound like a father for a minute, but, you know, one of the things that I try to convey to my sons, and certainly a thing that has definitely, considering where I came from and where I'm at now, you know, they talk about you're the sum of the 5 people, the 5 closest people in your circle. That's always, to me, been pretty telling. Like, so the more people that you can surround yourself with that are high achievers or people that are in alignment with what your values and your integrity are and your value system, it's going to help you, you know, model behavior. But also, like you said, if you reach out to someone who can kind of be a mentor, or maybe not even a mentor, but give you advice, it flattens that learning curve exponentially, right? Because those people have already been there and done it, and success leaves clues. So the more people that you can talk to, or advice that you can get from that are kind of where you want to be, the better off you'll be, I think. You can
that was a lot on the I guess on the psychological part of it, because in my mind it's like, oh, you know, I've been doing this for this many years, so it's you know, I should know how to do some of this stuff, or, you know, how to build more business. But then it's like, yeah, no, just you don't know, you'll never know everything. There'll always be people you can pick, you know, that you can learn from and
Oh,
pick
yeah.
their brain. So yeah, that's one thing that that I've been working on, and book helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, again, she talked in here, and it's hard for people because naturally we're set up to be reactive in nature. You have to train yourself to be proactive, right? We're set up to sort of get through life with the skills that we're innately given. But in order to achieve greater goals and attain higher objectives, we've got to be proactive about it. We've got to time block. We have to be purposeful with what our activities are going to be. So, you know, it goes back to that thing I talked about maybe a little bit last week. Zig Ziglar said that in order to do any of that stuff, in order for us to stay on task, on track, we have to refresh that mindset and that motivation consistently. And that's the part that even if you're great, like even the greatest players in sports have coaches. The greatest players in sports have these sports therapy people around them. They have these mindset coaches. That one football player was reading a mindset book on the sidelines from you know, that book blew up this week. But
AJ Brown from the Eagles.
Eagles,
Fly
right?
Eagles.
Fly Eagles fly. But yeah, I mean it's
What book was it? Was it David Goggins' book?
Yeah, it's inner excellence.
inner excellence.
You know, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my team, so I watch them.
Yeah, that book's blowing up this week. They should give him a cut of the royalties they're going to get in that book. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason, you know, he's probably reading that book, right? Even though he's a high level, you know, at the highest level possible in his position, he's still trying to refresh that mindset on a daily basis. And you got to, because if not, we just get in these tracks of life. And it just takes something extra to strive and be a little bit more purposeful. Yeah, good stuff. All right, guys. Well, like I said, I'll give back a few minutes here. Hope everyone has an amazing week. Wish me luck next week in DC, dealing with DC, and hope everyone has a great 2 weeks. And we'll reconvene on the 30th. Yeah, January 30th.
Greg, do you have a few minutes after the call, or do you want to just hang on here?
Yeah. We can hang on here after everybody jumps off.
Cool.
Good luck, Greg. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian.
Take care, guys. Let me see here.
Is Rickalyn with us? I haven't heard her voice.
Let's- Well, there we go.
Okay.
Just us.
I didn't hear that voice.
Well, let me stop the recording real quick.
Okay. I think it may have stopped on its own. A thing came up saying